HTML5 semantic elements from textbook 1 in this video. There's some new tags that's come in with HTML5 that are required for all standard web pages. It's like earlier I showed you the standard tags for a regular web page with the doc type, the body, the HTML, the head, the title, and all that. Well, there's some other ones to be compliant with HTML5 documents. We use some semantic tags that define special areas of a web page that make it easier for us to identify and add CSS styles to with tag selectors. These areas will be the header, the nav, the main, the section, the article, the aside, and the footer. The header is at the top of the page, and that's where your brand identity, logo, and things like that go. The nav comes nearly under that, and that's where your main global navigation links for the website are. After that, you'll have the main area, and that is going to contain all your main content. Inside the main area, you may have like content on the page, and those would go into sections. Sections are an area that can't stand on their own as an element of content, but they do define a certain section of the page that has like content. Articles go inside the sections, and those can stand on their own. They're independent piece of content that either works on that page, or you could syndicate off to another page, a blog or a news story. The aside is a related tangential piece of content that's not essential to the page, but adds to the value of understanding the page. And at the bottom is the footer. That's the closing of the web page. And all of those go inside the body tag. So you'd open the body area with the body tag, you'd put the header in. Header has a closing tag when you close that area. Then you'd put the nav in, then you'd close the nav area, then you put the main in. Inside the main, you'd put your sections and articles depending on how much and the type of content you would have. And at the very bottom, you'd put your footer in, close the footer, and then you'd close your body. So let's look at 2D. This exercise, there's not going to be a lot of visual change happening on screen because it's all structural in nature. This is not design, this is HTML. So we're setting up for the exercise after this where we're actually going to set some CSS to design the page. But right now the HTML5 semantic elements are all structural in nature. So let's go ahead and open up a folder from your downloads, and we're going to look in a folder called Structural Semantics. So I'm going to go to Sublime Text. I'll file open, and I'll go to our web dev class. Actually, I'm going to go to my hard drive, go into the folder I'm working in. I have a Structural Semantics. Now I've designated this one for online class, so I'm going to go inside the Structural Semantics is what you'll be looking for in your downloads. Then we're going to go in and start with a page that says semantic elements dash semantic dash elements.html. So there's our page. We'll open that. And we'll see we have a lot of HTML already in here that they've given us. They have, notice we have a head. We have no styling up here, so there's no style on the page, but we do have our body. We do have our H1, our H2s. We have some content inside paragraphs. We have links on the page with the ahref. I don't see any image tags right now. So let's go ahead and look at this in a browser and see what we have. So we'll open up Chrome and go File, Open File. And I'm going into Structural Semantics for this class and semantic-elements.html. And we just have a very plain HTML page. There's our H1, there's an H2, there's some links, some ahrefs, there's an H3, there's a paragraph, there's another link right there, ahref. So this is what's on the page. We're not really going to change the look a whole lot on this, but we're going to work on the structure to put in our semantic tags, which I'll then look at on your next exercise when you turn it in. So let's go to our code. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to add our header. This is where we're going to put our brand identity or our main identification of the site. So we're going to go and put that around the fish and fowl in the amazing animal blog. So we're going to come up here. This is our header right above the navigation. And we're just going to bracket header, and then after our first H2 we're going to come down here and close this one. I'm going to save it and refresh it, and we should see nothing really change on our page because this is not a visual update, this is a structural update. Yep, nothing changed, so that was what I expected. So let's keep adding these tags in. So the next thing I'm going to do around our navigation right here is I'm going to put the nav tag in to identify this area in semantic terms. So just bracket NAV, the end of the navigation. But you'll also notice in our Ahrefs for our links, notice we don't have URLs in there. If you don't know URLs when you're building the links to a page yet, you can put the hashtag in, and that can be a placeholder until you get the URL that you'd like to put in there, whether it be absolute, remember, which is the complete one to go to a different website, or the relative, which goes to the pages on the same website. So now that we have the nav in, we're going to do a little housekeeping before we move to the next section. It's really good idea to make a lot of your main navigation into links. So we're going to take care of that right now. So inside the nav semantic tag, we're going to put in a UL for an unordered list. We'll find out the benefits of making links into list items later in the book, but let's just go ahead and get this done while we're here because it's a good practice. So you put your unordered list in, and you make a list item out of each separate link. So we'll come in here and put an LI in. Remember to close it. To get used to this text completion, it's pretty cool. And one more. All right, I'm going to save that, and we should see a little bit of change. What we should see is we should see dots go next to our links up here. So you can see that we had a bullet item next to each one, and it went from a horizontal to a vertical navigation when we put that unordered list on our links. Now that we have that, let's go back and keep working. I'm going to go ahead and establish our main section that has our main content. So I'm going to click in here. I'm going to write main. I know the book does it a little bit later than me, but I like to define main straight out of the box. And I think we'll come down all the way till, I'll check where they want us to end the main. They come after we finish with the sharks section. So we'll come down here, swimming with sharks, and we'll close the main right here because the content under that's going to be in the aside, and that's not essentially the main content. So the main is the most important main content of your page. Something else we're going to do with the main, we're going to go up to the opening main tag and go role, give it a space, go role equals main. And this is just to help older legacy browsers work with this new semantic tagging. So it's not really necessary for newer browsers, but this is to help legacy browsers. So after we have the main done, we're going to actually put in some of our sections now. So I'm going to save that. Come back and refresh. So what you'll see as far as sections, we have two types of important content. We have peacock and eagles, which are birds, and then we have other main content, which is sharks. So we're going to have a section that defines all of the bird content, and then we're going to have a second section that defines all of the fish content. And within the section for the birds, we're going to have two articles that define different birds. We'll have an article for the peacock We'll have an article for the eagle, and we'll have one article inside the fish one for the sharks. So let's go define our sections. So I'm going inside this first area right before have you ever met a peacock. Now I'm going to define a section right there. And I'm going to come down and close the section after the second bird, after this, before we open up the one for the fish with the shark. So I'll come down here and close that section. Then inside that section, there's some place for some articles. So I'm going to do an article for the peacock. I'm going to close that article before we get to the eagles. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put a new article for the eagles starting down here. I'm going to close that article before we close the whole section. So I'm going to put this after the link but before the closing section tag. And remember, the difference is sections for like types of content on a page and articles for pieces of independent content that can stand on their own either on this page or on other pages as blog posts or really simple syndication type of things. So that one's all set up. So let's see what else we need to do. The section in the article for the sharks. So I'm going to give that a space and come down and just write section there. Come down after the link and close that section. Then inside of that, I'm going to go ahead and define the inner content as the article. There's only one article in this section. I'm going to go down and close the article before the closing section tag. So the last thing we want to do is you want to put some H2s in to help understand what each of those sections are about. So we're going to go into the bird section and put an H2 in above the first article. So we're going to go inside this section up here, give it a space, H2, and birds because peacocks and eagles are birds. And we're going to go down, do the same thing for the sharks, but we're going to call that one fish. We'll go inside the section before the article. Not first, but fish. All right, so let's save that and look at it. So the only real visual changes you've seen are we have a new H2 for the birds and a new H2 for the fish. Remember, these semantic tags are structural. They should not be changing what we're looking at. So now we have some unimportant content or less important content at the bottom as it is, and that will be the aside. So we're going to come down here, and after our main closes, before the more posts, we can put our opening aside in there. And we're going to put our closing aside after this closing UL. And this is just for tangential content that helps the page but is not essential content for the page. And then at the bottom of the page, we put our last main semantic tag in, and that's the footer, and we're going to put that around this last paragraph. So we're going to come after the aside, and we're going to type in the opening tag for the footer, and come down before the closing body tag, and we're going to close the footer. And those are all the essential semantic tags for HTML5 documents to be compliant. Like I said, you do not see anything in here whatsoever. There's two more tags I want to show you about before we finish this lesson. It's figure and fig caption. Figure is something you would wrap an image in so you could then add a caption into that called fig caption. So let's go ahead and let's put an image on the page first. So let's look at our directory. Before we actually add the image, I want to show you where the images are in relation to this page. So if we go into our folder where we're working from, you'll notice that we're working on the semantic-elements.html page. There's a folder for your images. They've called this IMG with the book. I don't agree with this. I would call it a full images folder, but they called it IMG, so we have to use that folder name when we write the path to our image from our page. So what we're doing is we're going from the semantic-elements.html page to the IMG folder, then we're going inside the IMG folder and we're going to use the tawny-frogmouth.jpg image. So let's go ahead and code that onto our page. We're going to do this right after the closing nav semantic tag. So here's our closing nav semantic tag on about line 20 of my document. Give it a couple of lines of space so you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to code the IMG SRC, that's for image source. IMG is the tag and SRC is the attribute, and the value of this attribute will be the path to the images folder. So it's IMG / Tawny. This is a really long image name. I would not name my images this long of an image name if I were you. I would keep them shorter. That's a JPG for a JPEG. After that, you want to do the normal stuff. You want to put in the height and the width of this so that the image will load into the browser faster. Let me get that JPG name correctly. The height is going to be 346, that's pixels, but you don't have to specify the unit of measure on that. And width is going to be 700. And you want to put your alt text in. This is for people that have audio browsers or people with ADA disabilities to help them out. So remember to always put your alt text in. That's the attribute. And the value is going to be just the word tawny frogmouth. And let's test this before we do the fig and fig capture tags. So we've done that. Let's go to our page. Let's refresh and see if we get an image. There's our image. The big surprise, it's not a frog, it's a bird. Really, really weird biology, but we don't name birds. We just put the pictures of them on web pages. So let's add the semantic figure and fig caption to this to bring this up to HTML5 standards. So we're going to wrap the image in a figure tag. And we're going to Oops, let me finish closing my image tag down here. Glad I caught that. Give it a line of code because we're going to have to put the fig caption tag in afterwards. So we're going to close our figure tag. So we're wrapping the image in this figure tag so we can add the caption. So we're going to save that and look at it. Refresh. So it made it move over a little bit. Nothing shows up because we haven't added the caption. So the cool thing about the caption is it's a good deal of text to put in, yet they've given us that text to put in with our sample code. So we can go to Sublime Text and go get that. So I'm just going to open a second document in here. I'm going to go in Sublime Text and go File, Open. Go into a folder called Snippets, which is inside our Structural Semantics folder. I'm just going to open Content-Fig Caption. It's just some HTML. I'm going to copy all of that so we don't have to type that. You should do the same thing. It came with your downloaded content. Highlight all that, edit, copy, go back to our main document. And first I'm going to code my fig caption tags. Do that, and I'll do my closing tag. I'm going to paste that code right between the opening and closing fig and fig caption tags. So I've put that captioning text between the opening fig caption and the closing fig caption. I'm going to save that, refresh it, and there's our caption that goes with the image.